When the final round of the Open Championship ended, the real drama started in the player lounge. 7 of the biggest names in golf did not go home to celebrate or rest. They stayed behind to corner Brian Rolapp. This was not a casual chat about the schedule. This unified group included a mix of legacy icons, major champions, and the most powerful voices in the locker room. These were not just random tour members complaining about a schedule change. These were the exact 7 individuals who hold the real power behind the scenes, the ones who actually dictate the future of the sport. These 7 player directors walked into the room with a single, unified message for the PGA Tour CEO. They were done playing nice. For months, the tour leadership has been pushing a massive change for 2028 behind closed doors. The players have stayed quiet for a long time, but this weekend broke the silence. The 7 stars looked at the new rules and decided to draw a hard line in the sand. They knew that if they did not act right now, the traditional game they love would be gone forever. Rolapp expected them to quietly accept his new vision. He thought his authority was enough to make them agree. He was completely wrong. The players did not just bring complaints to this meeting, they brought a final warning. One single document slid across the table, and the specific demands written inside made the CEO realize his entire future plan was in immediate danger. Beyond simple disagreements over prize money, this revolt could change professional golf forever. The control of the tour has completely changed. My view is simple. These 7 stars are finally protecting the true soul of golf. So tell me if you think they are going too far in the comments. And please subscribe for more honest golf news. Understanding this major rebellion requires looking at the exact trap Rolapp built for them, because the hidden details are much worse than any fan could ever expect today on tour. This entire fight centers on a proposed split. Rolapp wants to divide the schedule into 2 distinct levels. Top events secure the huge payouts and the biggest television coverage. Lower-tier tournaments get left behind to fight for basic survival. On paper, this looks like a smart business move to concentrate star power, but in reality, it is a direct attack on the history of the sport. Fans and players alike see right through this corporate strategy. This approach strips away the very events that built professional golf. Historic stops like the Canadian Open, the Colonial, and the Phoenix Open define the summer schedule. These are not just regular stops on the calendar. Such legendary institutions hold decades of deep legacy. Under the new proposal, these massive events get pushed down to the 2nd division. Destroying historic tournaments is bad enough on its own, yet the hidden financial rules attached to this downgrade will quietly force the biggest legends into early retirement. Such a major shift goes far beyond a simple schedule change. A brutal promotion and relegation system anchors this new 2nd tier. Golfers who fail to meet strict performance metrics get dropped instantly. Dropping down means losing access to top events and the huge paychecks that come with them. For a global icon like Tiger Woods, this constant pressure is completely unsustainable. Physical toll from the modern game is already incredibly high. Adding a weekly fear of losing your tour card makes it impossible. Rolapp truly believed the locker room would accept these harsh new conditions without a fight. He completely ignored the quiet conversations happening among the player directors all week. The sudden realization that the tour was walking off a financial cliff changed everything for the player directors, making the immediate cancellation of the next policy vote their only real priority. This model heavily favors young, upcoming stars while punishing established veterans. Sponsors would follow the top tier, leaving the historic events with empty pockets and no star power. An entire ecosystem of professional golf would collapse under its own weight. The Canadian Open would lose its ability to attract top global talent. The Colonial would lose its historic prestige. The Phoenix Open would lose its massive crowds. A fierce competitor like Webb Simpson knew that losing these domestic anchors would completely destroy the foundation of the summer schedule. Every single one of these 7 men had their own personal agents and managers whispering in their ears. Some agents told them to just take the money and run. Others told them to fight the tour all the way to the end. The player directors had to filter out all that outside noise and focus only on what was best for the game. It required a massive amount of trust between the 7 men. If one of them leaked the strategy to their agent, the whole plan would be ruined. The divide was stark. Players like Patrick Cantlay focus heavily on the global schedule and international majors. Meanwhile, a veteran presence like Adam Scott has deep, personal ties to the traditional international events that built his legacy. Rolapp's team knew this. They quietly approached the players with different interests first. The pitch was simple: protect your specific tournament, and we will guarantee its status. even if the rest of the schedule burns. It was a classic divide-and-conquer tactic. The executives believed that self-interest would naturally override group loyalty. They assumed that once one player secured a safe harbor, the rest of the alliance would scramble for their own lifeboats. But they underestimated the shared history these 7 men had in the locker room. They had played together for decades. They knew each other's tells. When the side deals were proposed, the targeted players did not hide them. Instead, they brought the offers straight to the center of the group. This radical transparency instantly neutralized the CEO's primary weapon. This fragile unity was about to face its biggest test when the tour's media team tried to leak a fake story to break their resolve. Getting 7 top players to agree on one single strategy is nearly impossible. These directors represent completely different interests. Brian Rolapp knows exactly how to use this natural division to his advantage. He did not try to fight all of them at once. Instead, he started making quiet side deals with the members who cared most about their own local events. This secret strategy began to crack the alliance from the inside, because if even one director accepted a special exemption, the entire revolt would instantly collapse. The remaining golfers would look foolish for fighting a battle they could not win. The CEO was playing a brilliant game of course management, picking off the weak spots one by one. He offered guaranteed appearance fees to a few key directors. He promised extra marketing support for their specific charity events. He used the massive financial leverage of the tour to buy their silence. The rebellion was dying a quiet death, until one specific text message completely changed the dynamic of the entire locker room. That message came from Tiger Woods. He did not call a massive meeting or give a loud speech. He simply reminded the other 6 directors about the original promise they made to the game. He pointed out that if they let the corporate team divide them now, the tour would permanently belong to the executives. The golfers would just be employees hitting shots for television ratings. Tiger reminded them of the history of the tour. He reminded them that the players built this game, not the corporate boards. Tiger's quiet reminder forced the remaining directors to realize they had only one real weapon left to stop the takeover. They needed to take the fight out of the private boardrooms and into the public eye. Private meetings were clearly failing. Rolapp was too good at controlling the narrative behind closed doors. The only way to force his hand was to make the entire golf world watch the conflict unfold in real time. They decided to use the final press conference of the Open Championship as their stage. Stepping into that media center required a level of bravery that most professional athletes simply do not possess when their careers are on the line. They knew the tour's media relations team would try to shut them down. They knew the public relations staff would have prepared statements ready to dismiss their claims. But the group of stars had prepared their own specific talking points. They were not going to talk about feelings or general complaints. They were going to read the exact financial numbers that proved the 2-tier system was designed to fail. They had the hard data to back up their claims. The moment they sat down at the microphones, the first question from a reporter completely derailed the tour's planned media strategy for the entire week. The reporter did not ask about golf swings or course conditions. He asked directly about the secret 2-tier document. The player directors did not look at each other for permission. The designated speaker, Rory McIlroy, simply leaned into the microphone and confirmed the rumors were entirely true. He then dropped a massive piece of information that no one in the room expected. He revealed that the 7 directors had already signed a formal legal objection to the new schedule, effectively freezing the policy board's ability to vote on the matter. This single statement sent shockwaves through the golf media. Reporters started typing furiously on their phones. The news spread across social media before the press conference even ended. Fans immediately started sharing the updates. The corporate veil was completely torn down. Everyone now knew that the players were actively fighting the CEO's biggest project. The legal freeze meant Rolapp could not push the vote through this week. He was completely blocked. The media fallout was instant and brutal. Golf fans took to social media to defend the historic tournaments. They started trending hashtags demanding the tour protect the Canadian Open and the Colonial. The narrative completely flipped against Brian Rolapp overnight. He was no longer seen as a brilliant sports executive. To the fans, he looked like a greedy corporate suit trying to erase golf history. The player directors used this public anger as leverage. They knew Rolapp hated bad publicity. They used the fan backlash to push their demands even further. They asked for written guarantees that the second-tier events would still get prime weekend television slots. Public anger gave the players massive leverage, yet it also created a dangerous blind spot regarding the actual cash flow. Rolapp watched the live broadcast from his office and immediately realized he had lost control of the public narrative. He tried to issue a quick statement to calm things down. He claimed the new structure was just a preliminary idea and that everyone was working together. He tried to paint the players as confused and misinformed, but the players were not buying the spin. They released a follow-up statement just an hour later. They demanded a full veto power over any schedule changes that threatened traditional events. They also demanded a guarantee that prize money for the second tier would not drop below current levels. The players thought they had won the public battle and forced the CEO into a corner, completely unaware of what Rolapp was secretly doing with the tour's biggest financial backers. While the players were celebrating their media victory, Rolapp was on the phone with major sponsors. He did not complain about the players. He simply showed them the financial projections for the next 5 years. He explained that a divided tour would mean lower television ratings and fewer viewers. Lower viewers meant less value for their advertising dollars. He painted a picture of a fractured sport where the best players might not even show up to the sponsors' favorite events. By the time the sun set on Sunday, 3 of the tour's top 5 sponsors had quietly asked for emergency meetings with the player directors. This is where the story reaches a terrifying crossroads. The players thought they had the momentum. They thought the public pressure would force Rolapp to back down completely. But the sudden withdrawal of sponsor interest changed the entire math of the situation. The golfers suddenly realized that winning the media war might cost them the financial war. The historic tournaments they were trying to save relied heavily on this corporate sponsorship money. These sponsors were not just local businesses. They were massive global corporations, automotive brands, major banks, and top beverage companies. They spend millions of dollars to have their logos on the scoring towers and the leaderboards. When the tour told them the schedule was in chaos, those companies panicked. They do not want to associate their brands with a broken product. If the Canadian Open loses its title sponsor, the purse drops by $10 million overnight. That money does not just disappear. It means less prize money for the players and fewer resources for the local charity that hosts the event. The tour's financial team ran the numbers and showed the directors the exact damage. The financial team laid out a terrifying scenario. If just 2 major automotive sponsors pulled their backing, the total prize purse for the affected events would shrink by nearly 30%. This was not just a theoretical risk. The sponsors made it clear they were actively exploring alternative investments. They were looking at tennis, Formula One, and even emerging esports leagues. Golf was no longer the only guaranteed return on investment. The message from the corporate boardrooms was brutal and direct. If the tour could not guarantee a stable, unified product, the money would go elsewhere. The players suddenly realized that their public victory was creating a private financial disaster. They were winning the hearts of the fans, but they were losing the war for the tournament purses. The reality of professional golf is that it runs on corporate dollars, not just fan passion. Without that financial backbone, the entire structure would collapse. A sudden $50 million budget hole appeared, forcing the 7 directors into a corner they never expected to enter. The emergency sponsor meetings forced the 7 directors to face a brutal reality that no amount of public support could fix. If the sponsors pulled their money, the historic tournaments would die anyway. The players would be left fighting for a tour with empty pockets. They had pushed Rolapp into a corner, but he had managed to pull the financial rug out from under them. The revolt was now threatening the very events they were trying to save. Total financial collapse forced the player directors to make a massive compromise that would completely rewrite their original demands before the week ended. This brings us to the final closed-door meeting that actually resolved the crisis. It happened on Tuesday morning, just before the week officially ended. The 7 stars walked into the executive boardroom. Rolapp was already sitting at the head of the table. There were no cameras this time. There were no reporters. It was just the 8 of them and a stack of revised contracts. The mood in the room was strictly business. The public posturing was over. Now they had to find a way to save the tour. The first document placed in front of the players contained a shocking concession that completely validated their initial fears about the sport's future. Rolapp agreed to drop the promotion and relegation system for the historic events. The Canadian Open, the Colonial, and the Phoenix Open would remain in the top tier. They would keep their current status and their current purse sizes. The players had successfully protected the legacy tournaments. This was a massive victory for the 7 directors. They had stopped the corporate takeover of the sport's history. The decision to save the historic events came with a hidden cost that every single player director had to accept before signing the final page of the new agreement. In exchange for keeping the traditional events safe, The players agreed to a strict reduction in their own scheduling freedom. They had to commit to playing a minimum of 18 events per year. This is a massive increase from the current minimum. A player like Jordan Spieth had to completely restructure his entire season to accommodate these new demands. They also agreed to let the tour dictate the exact dates for the new championship series. They gave up the flexibility they originally fought to protect. They could no longer skip events to rest or play in overseas exhibitions. The tour now owned their calendar. The act of signing that final page meant the players won the war for the soul of golf, yet they completely lost the battle for their own personal freedom on the course. This final agreement is the true payoff of this entire saga. It is not a perfect victory for either side. Rolapp gets to keep his two-tier structure for the non-historic events. He gets his concentrated star power for the new championship series, but he had to abandon his plan to relegate the legendary tournaments. The players get to save the history of the game, but they have to sacrifice their own schedule flexibility to do it. Both sides had to give up something they desperately wanted. Looking at this final compromise, it is clear that professional golf has permanently changed its power structure forever. The era of the CEO making unilateral decisions is officially over. The players have proven that they have the collective power to stop a massive corporate overhaul. They showed that they can organize, execute a media strategy, and force the leadership to the negotiating table. But they also learned that corporate money still holds the ultimate leverage. The sponsors can shut down a player revolt just as fast as the players can shut down a CEO. The next few months will be incredibly interesting to watch. The tour now has to actually build this new two-tier system without breaking the historic events. The sponsors will be watching closely to make sure the television ratings stay high. The fans will be watching to see if the quality of golf actually improves. The pressure is now entirely on the tour leadership to make this new format work. The real test of this new agreement will happen next January, when the first official event of the new season finally tees off in California. If the fans tune in and the ratings go up, Rolapp will claim his vision was right all along. If the ratings drop and the historic events struggle, the players will point to their compromise as the only thing that saved the tour. Either way, the 7 stars who stood up at the Open Championship will be remembered as the group that forced the change. They stepped up when no one else would. They took the heat so the rest of the tour didn't have to. They did not just complain about the schedule. They risked their own sponsorships, their own relationships with the leadership, and their own public image to protect the game. That is exactly what the fans wanted to see. That is exactly why this story captured the attention of the entire golf world. The players proved they care about more than just their own bank accounts. They care about the legacy of the sport. To truly understand the weight of this moment, you have to look back at the history of professional golf. This is not the first time the players have had to fight the leadership. Back in the 1960s, Arnold Palmer and Jack Nicklaus led a similar revolt. They demanded that the players get a bigger share of the television money. They threatened to boycott the tour if their demands were not met. That historic fight created the modern PGA Tour. It turned golf into a multi-billion-dollar global sport. Today, the current player directors are walking in those exact same footsteps. They are proving that the players still hold the real power in this sport. The corporate executives might run the day-to-day operations, but the stars on the course are the ones who actually generate the value. Without the players, the television deals are worthless. Without the stars, the sponsors will walk away. This compromise is just the latest chapter in a 50-year battle for control of professional golf. The game has always been at a crossroads. The equipment changes, the courses get longer, and the money gets bigger. But the core struggle remains exactly the same. It is always about who controls the schedule and who gets the money. A director like Peter Malnati understood this history better than anyone in that room. He knew that if they backed down now, the next generation of golfers would face an even worse situation. They were not just fighting for their own careers, they were fighting for the next 50 years of the sport. Those historic battles from the 1960s reveal one final truth about the future of this sport. As we look toward the future of the PGA Tour, one final question remains that will dictate everything moving forward for the next decade. Will this compromise actually save the traditional events, or is it just a temporary bandage on a much deeper financial wound? Only time will tell. But for now, the players have secured the history of the game. The legacy tournaments are safe, the soul of golf is protected, and the fans can finally look forward to a schedule that respects the past while trying to build the future. The war is over, but the real work is just beginning. Thank you for sticking with me through this entire story. If you found this breakdown helpful, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Make sure you are subscribed so you do not miss the next major update on the PGA Tour. We will be watching every single event next season to see how this new agreement actually plays out on the course. See you in the next video.